The FCIA presents Fibre Channel Zoning Fundamentals Using Zoning.
Now what we understand is basically what zoning is, how it works, and the basics behind it. I want to cover basically using zoning, putting it all together in the storage area network environments, and basically, like really, it's simple. It essentially partitions your network, make it more efficient, make it more or make it the performance of your network is more consistent if you zone it properly. And that actually is like really the first principle is keep it simple. And you can there are different kind of ways of keeping it simple. One zone per application, say for example, where your application needs access to all the storage, so that you can do. And that's where what Rupin was talking about, the peer zoning comes into play, right? Because your storage devices, you can actually start from there and say which servers need access to this device and limit the visibility into that. This is Zoning is not just for partitioning, but it actually what it achieves is the security of your data, because it basically limits the access to particular data sets for only to the servers that actually need it, right? And that actually is a very important function of a zoning that comes together through zoning, really. The all the vendors basically that work in fiber channel. So one of the best things about fiber channel is that the fiber channel industry association, um, and through T11, basically all the vendors come together to create the standards and then write their software uh, to meet those standards basically. So once something becomes standardized, it proliferates pretty quickly through the industry. It creates the best practices around a use of a technology that is vendor agnostic. So it's basically very useful for customers to actually use it and get access to it. So many vendors, or almost all vendors, have some kind of automation and management solutions that actually allow you to automate the creation and management of zoning basically. That achieves two things. One is so first is keep it simple, but with automation available, use automation where possible, because what that does is basically it saves you time, number one, and it avoids all the errors and debugging that's needed um, after the fact. And so it's basically reduces the management time, the management burden on the storage teams that are needed. So those are the like really basic ways you can manage is like really keep it simple, use automation, and if you use automation, you'll basically like it'll be very simple and easy to manage for you guys. Uh, the Another thing is basically, of course, regular maintenance. We all understand how the LUNs get created for projects. Projects finish and the LUNs languish or whatnot. Same thing with servers. Servers come in, servers retire. Uh, all those activities that are happening around us. That means that you need regular maintenance. And again, this centralized management or automation through API, through CLI, whatever tools you want to use, those allow you to regularly maintain your zones. Um, Essentially, uh, the whole structure is such that in fiber channel, information propagates throughout the network um, uh, with uh, with a lot of fa- fabric services and general services that are available in the network, in the switches and in the HBAs and in servers and targets. So that actually allows you to like really make a change, and that propagates throughout the network properly, and you don't have to worry about uh, dead weight essentially of having more zones that nobody's using. A lot of zones without members in it and all that kind of thing. So keep an eye on it, and regular maintenance basically will help save a lot of cycles later on. So we're going to take a look at just a quick example like say virtualization. Virtualization basically is pretty ubiquitous in data center environments, and Fibre Channel is the highest touch for virtualization. Basically, a lot of virtualization runs on Fibre Channel storage, and so one thing to do is basically ESX servers are all clustered, and every basically ESX server that is clustered needs access to the same storage for the cluster to work. And that means that you need zoning practices that might mean that it actually want to have more open zoning, but actually a little bit uh, counterintuitive, but you want to have more restrictive zoning practices in terms of clusters. So all ESX clusters are not basically not every ESX server is used for the same function. Many times you will have some ESX servers reserved for one function versus the others, basically, right? So you can actually use that to lead your zoning practices. You can create zones that are like essentially divided by function, divided by applications that are being used. If you have like say databases or SharePoint or whatnot, what other applications are running on certain clusters, limit the visibility to the volumes on to that cluster. What that'll automatically do is basically that'll limit your VM movement from across only those ESX servers. So basically, you have much more like segmented environment uh, where your storage team is actually assigning the storage to that particular set of servers, and those servers are running the VMs, and the VMs can move across those servers because they all have access to the same zone. Now, one thing to know is that the zone itself is actually on the WWN number of the HBA or the HBA port that is connecting, and like it was mentioned before. Make sure you're using the right kind of zoning, basically either the peer zoning or the target driven zoning, basically. But even if you use the switch based zoning, it has the same kind of impact on the availability of the LUNs and all. But it depends on what you want to use. A WWN based worldwide name based zoning is great. Another thing to note is that another thing, actually, one of the best practices would be that you want to WWNs are basically a string of hexadecimal numbers. Basically, it's like about 8 of them in one name, and that's hard to remember. Nobody can remember, actually, and so using aliases is great. Actually, aliases basically create a easy to understand a name of your initiator server, whatever it is, right? So you can actually align your server names, initiator names, basically your server names, align your target LUN names, all that to your WWNs, worldwide names, basically, and then that allows you to like map it clearly, understand the mapping, see it through your centralized management console and all that. So that's what preferred with virtualization and the newer NVMe devices, for example. Um, it it basically is exactly the same for even if you are using disks for some low level like or actually low importance workload, um, on not performance demanding workloads to NVMe, which actually are very high performing devices. Zoning works exactly the same. Fibre Channel has been supporting NVMe since 1.0, even before 1.0, I would say, uh, since 3 generations back of Fibre Channel uh, network generations. So essentially, it's all baked in. We always have supported NVMe and SCSI, and all our technologies that go into SAN work the same way. Uh, uh, and so once you have set the zoning, that's another one another best practice, and this is what happens in typical data center environments is storage team is separate than virtual machine administration team or VMware administrators or even Microsoft administrators. There's nothing special about one or the other virtualization platform. Uh, but zoning or actually having these in general fiber channel network administration separated out from virtual administrators, that allows you to basically hand over uh, the control of actual VM administration without having to actually work very closely all the time. So it's basically it provides you a very good way of actually keeping the control while actually allowing a lot of flexibility to the VM administrators. So zoning basically, because it limits the visibility to the data to only to those servers that need that information, all that you can actually manage through the limiting visibility feature of zoning. Again, centralized management, I cannot emphasize more, but it need not be a management console. It need not be a graphical console or anything like that. It can be an API. It can be some private cloud API like Puppet and Ansible that you're using. It's okay. It'll work. Many vendors support that. Support the CLIs and support their consoles, support those kind of structures. So you can actually use that very easily and incorporate that with zoning. Another example is databases. So basically, same thing applies to databases. There is no vMotion or storage vMotion in databases, definitely, but there is basically a distributed database. There are database clusters that are actually important to make it work. And one of the major functions of databases is backup servers and tapes availability and all that. In those cases, basically creating separate zones for those actually helps in traffic shaping. Security is, of course, important for databases, but actually like more of backup and tape environments, basically. So you can create different zones um, for those, and then that way it'll be much faster to use. So that's essentially zoning allows you a flexibility of creating a most efficient sub network within your larger network. And there are multiple ways of zoning. There are multiple ways you can automate it, and all are essentially supported because Fiber Channel standardizes a lot of this technology before this technology is commercially available, and that actually takes all the interoperability uh, uh, or non-interoperability issues away from this, because when something is in the standard, everybody deploys to that standard, and actually that becomes very easy for customers to actually just buy it and use it, basically. So that's one of the best things about Fiber Channel.
For more resources on Fibre Channel zoning fundamentals, visit the FCIA YouTube channel.